Welcome to the Chairman's Perspective Podcast. Chairman.
Welcome back to the Chairman's Perspective, where we keep you informed on everything Shelby County. I'm your host, and DC is my co-host.
That's right here, Mr. Chairman.
And today we're going to talk about what I want to talk about today. Is that okay, DC?
Oh, Lord. It's going to get hot in here.
You don't have a problem with that, do you?
I'm going to cut the air on, that's all. I'm going to cut the air on. I'm good with that.
So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with you on the Chairman's Perspective, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network.
The Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
KUDZUKIAN!
R&R on Sports is proud to be on Sirius XM.
So what's R&R stand for?
Real talk and relevant sports issues.
It's racial and relative. We're brothers from the South. We can relate.
R&R on Sports on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
I keep telling you the Chairman's Perspective is a place to be every week. Today is absolutely no exception. We're going to take a deep dive into the Shelby County budget, and who better to do that with than our own host and our own chairman, Van Turner Jr. Mr. Chairman, let me do one thing. First of all, let's set the record straight. What time did you all finish on Monday night?
We actually finished at 10 o'clock p.m.
Wait a minute, not 10 o'clock a.m.
No, sir.
10 o'clock p.m.?
10 o'clock p.m.
Man, y'all started at 1:30.
Started at 1:30. I actually had to come in for a 9 o'clock meeting, so I was there about 13 hours.
Wow. Doing the people's business.
Doing the people's business.
That's what I'm talking about. Let's talk a little bit about one of those issues I know that kept y'all there all night, and I think you probably got some more work to do on it, is schools. Everybody wants to talk schools and this and that and all the other. They asked for more money this year. How did they fare on Monday night?
Well, we didn't get them everything they wanted. They asked for about $7 million towards their operating funds, and we were able to come up with a scenario where we are allocating $2.2 million. And the $2.2 million will go towards what we call pilot programs, test programs, and coding, which you know is the thing now.
That's right.
And phonetics, reading. I mean, that's just essential and key to any education. You have to know your phonetics, your alphabets. That's the basis of reading. And so that will be 2.2. And the reason that they're itemized as pilot programs is that those will not be recurring funds that we do every year pursuant to the maintenance of effort law. And so essentially this is a one-time funding of $2.2 million for these pilot programs. And then that essentially does not have to be maintained the next fiscal year.
Well, see, and the next thing I was about to hit you with is, and this is your perspective. That's why we want to make sure folks know that on this particular show, this is the chair's take. We want to make sure that everybody knows this is an opportunity for the chair to say, look, we did the budget. We still got a little bit more work to do, but this is what I believe what we need to be looking at here as we go forward. But one thing about it, I've had people ask me, they say, well, you got a large district, but you got less kids. But now that you say it the way you said it, makes a little bit more sense to me. But now if I'm asking for an extra $20 million, an extra $30 million over last year's allocation, what do you say to those citizens that say, wait a minute, you have less kids?
Right. And we would not probably support anything like that. I mean, that's a huge allocation. And as you stated, the student population has changed and decreased. So what we're doing, again, is a one-time allocation that does not fit into the maintenance of effort rubric, which means that once you give, you have to continue giving year after year. And so to your point, since there has been a change in the student population, these one-time allocations are just that, and it's not anything that will recur next year. And so that's the operational budget. And then you have what they call the capital improvement budget for their schools, roofs, facilities, HVAC units, all of that. They requested about $63 million for that. $63 million. And let me sort of lay it out. Yeah, we gave them about $40 million, approximately $40 million. And they already had about $50 million that was given to them in prior years. About $60 million that was given to them in prior years. So when you take that 60 and that 40, you have approximately anywhere between $90 to $100 million that we've allocated to the Shelby County schools for their building projects. So there's about $50 to $60 million that is unspent now. So what we're doing is adding on to what's already there. So it's not like it goes from 0 to 40. It's basically going from an allocation that's there of approximately $60 million.
And you're just expanding it from 60 to that next level is what you're saying. Right.
So they'll have about 90 to 100 million in capital improvement dollars. And that's all allocated by the county commission over a 2-year time span. And so we just want to make sure that we're clearing the facts up, and we want to make sure that the public knows you can't be more concerned about education than those 13 commissioners on the Shelby County Commission. The 12 commissioners that I sit with, I hear them at every meeting. I see them at all the social functions. We talk in the hallways. Education is near and dear to their hearts, like it is to my heart. And the reason that all 13 of us are able to serve and be on the county commission was because some teacher somewhere taught us how to read and to add and to care about education, to care about ourselves, which prompted us, of course, pushed us to graduate. And we went on to start our careers, and now we're giving back to the citizens of Shelby County. So education is key to us, and we value it. And I think our budget shows and proves that.
I know you're a numbers guy, and one thing I want our listeners to understand is that now these new dollars that went from the 60 to about the 90 to 100 million, are there any additional dollars that go to, let's just say, the Germantown schools, let's say the Millington schools, the Lakeland schools? I know they've got a dog in this hunt too, right? Yeah.
So by law, whatever we give to the Shelby County schools, we have to split off a portion of to go to the 6 municipal school districts. I think it's approximately 22%. Wow. And so that's called the ADA split, which means average daily attendance. So that's just a complicated way of saying the dollars follow the child. Yeah. So every kid in Shelby County does not attend the Shelby County school system. So they're spread out across 7 districts. The majority are at SCS, but then you have these 6 other school districts as well. So that ratio split is about 22%. So whatever we give, when we say $40 million, you have to take that through the ADA split analysis. So it's slightly less than $40 million, but still the bulk of that goes towards where the most kids are, and those students are mostly in the Shelby County schools.
You're still talking about almost a little bit over $30 million still going to the larger district, though, right?
Right.
For capital needs.
And that's in addition, again, to what's already there. So
that was already in the pipe.
It's already there.
Wow.
So,
yeah. You know, one thing about not only the capital needs, but there was also this huge push, I know, on the city side, and that's why on Chairman's Perspective, you get a chance to hear not only the latest and the greatest, but you get a chance to hear from the young man who's actually the chair of the county commission, and that is the $2.5 million, I think, that was sitting out there that was asked for pre-K.
Right.
How did that come along in terms of the budget this fiscal year?
Well, the city and the county jointly indicated that they would support pre-K last year. And so this year was the first year of the funding allocation. And essentially, and this goes, there are 2 or 3 schools of thought, and I don't want to get into all of that, but basically there was a $2.5 million ask on top of the $6 million we had already allocated and the $6 million that was already in the budget. This was an additional 2.5 added on to that $6 million. And so essentially, we had to come up with that $2.5 million. Of course, it was a big public fight. And what we ended up doing was going into what we called our fund balance. Some people refer to it as our reserves. To the individual citizen, it would be your savings account.
Yeah, that's right.
And so essentially, in order to have a good profile to go to the bank, to go to the agencies we go to borrow money, we have to have a strong savings account, and we have to have a strong debt ratio to what's actually in our account balance. And so we really try not to dip below 20% in our fund balance. So you're talking about 20% of a $1.3 billion budget. Ooh. And so we don't want to go underneath 20%. We're right at that 20 to 21% threshold. We would like to keep it at 25% of our overall budget, and we're right down at 20. There was a lawsuit, some litigation pending with the city, and we were able to stipulate to some money coming over per that lawsuit. So that would replenish the 2.5 that we're allocating to pre-K. So basically, what's coming over from the city neutralizes what we're given in addition to the $6 million, what we're given to pre-K, the additional 2.5.
So you're listening to Chairman's Perspective, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network. And on today's show, it's the chair's take. So we got a little bit different roles today. The chair is a host of this program, but I thought it'd be a little interesting for us to sit down and actually have a conversation with our chairman of the county commission. The budget, for the most part, was just passed on this past Monday, and there was a lot of give and take on both sides, I would say. Would you not,
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
You know, but some folks got everything they asked for, and some probably got just a little bit.
Right.
But just about everybody got something.
Everybody got something.
You got to stretch that dollar, and apparently what we're faced with in our county, unfortunately, we're not growing from an economic standpoint as fast as we'd like to. Number one, I know, right?
Right. That's correct.
And so one of those things is I know that helps us grow is education. Lamont College.
Yeah.
I saw that they got an allocation to assist with some development and with their mission as a college in that particular community. How does that help, or how does that juxtapose itself with the commission's strategic position and what it's trying to do?
Well, as you know, I graduated from Morehouse College, and I think when this item first came up.
Is that in Atlanta, or is that the one in Mississippi?
It's not just Atlanta, it's Southwest Atlanta.
Oh, well, now that you put it that way, you're a Morehouse man. I got you. So
when this came up, I said that those HBCUs in Atlanta made all the difference.
Yeah.
You don't have a Maynard Jackson without a Morehouse College.
Yeah.
You don't have a Benjamin Elijah Mays without a Morehouse College. You don't have the bright, energetic, and brilliant leaders in Atlanta without the AUC, the Atlanta University Consortium, which includes Morehouse, Spelman, Clark Atlanta University, and back when I was there, Morris Brown College, and basically the School for Preachers, ITC, International Theological Seminary, I think, ITS. So essentially, that's why I think it's so important to support Lamont College. We need to attract talent to Memphis and keep the talent here that's already here. And that's what those HBCUs have been able to do in Atlanta. And I want Lamont College to be what Morehouse and Spelman and Clark and Morris Brown have been to Atlanta. And that's why it was a no-brainer for me, the $250,000 going to this great historic institution. And I supported this $250,000 allocation. I will support additional allocations in the future should they cross my desk. Sure.
Now, as we talk about Lamont College and what it's meant, Lamont College, what it's meant to not only Memphis but to the world. I mean, because it's turned out some fantastic contributors to our society.
Right.
They apparently have just gone through some changes, and I think that Dr. Miller will be segueing on out of the office of president. Have you heard any names batted around yet about possible replacements over there?
Not so far, and I will leave it to the board. Yeah. I know that they will choose the correct person for Lamont College. At this time, I have the utmost faith in Pastor Davis. I think he's the new
Dr.
board
Davis,
chair.
That's right.
Commissioner Lowry, Mikhail Lowry is on the board. And so I just think that they will get it together. They will appoint the correct person, and Lamont College will continue on. And more than that, we want it to thrive. And so we're very interested in seeing Lamont College be successful, and hopefully the board will appoint the right person.
You know, and speaking of, and I want to give kudos to Dr. Miller for what she has attempted to do with Lamont College. I mean, and there's going to be some folks that are going to be detractors, whatever you do, right, Mr. Chairman?
That's correct.
You're going to have those folks out there, but I think she laid it all on the line. I think she did the best she could at Lamont College, and I think we'd like to tip her hat to her for what she's attempted to do at Lamont College. Another great educator, Dr. Griffin. Right. Just recently, we found out that she's leaving ASD, which is Achievement School District, as a superintendent, and unfortunately, she'll be going to Metro School. See, we lose a lot of people to Nashville for whatever reason.
Right.
I don't know what that is. But now the ASD, which plays an important role with these very students that we're trying to allocate these dollars for here in Shelby County, how do you see, is ASD stable? Is the stability right in your opinion?
You know, there's always I would say tension, a yin and a yang, if you will. Sure. You have ASD, you have charter, you have traditional. And so I am a proponent of giving each child the best education possible. I think that the best education comes from a traditional environment, because when we support our traditional schools in our existing communities, we not only support the school, but we also support that community. And I think that charters are specialty schools. For instance, when we were growing up, you had Overton for music.
That's right.
And you had East back in that time for engineering. You had Wooddale for learning how to fly planes.
That's right. Aviation. That's exactly right.
And so these were specialty schools. And so that's what I always thought charter schools would be. ASD would come in for the most needed, for the most need. Right? Yeah, for the turnarounds, which is not every school.
That's right.
And so I thought that would be what should happen, and that each would complement the other. I would hate for the charter, the ASD, and the traditional schools to be fighting one another for students, but it seems at some point in time that's what you see. You see traditional schools fighting for kids in the communities where you have 2 or 3 charter schools, then you have an ASD to pop up, and it's all serving one community. So I think that therein lies the issue, but I'm a strong supporter of traditional public schools. All 3 of my children are students in traditional Shelby County schools. My wife is an educator in the Shelby County schools, and both my parents retired.
That's right. You come from a long line of educators.
So I'm a big proponent of traditional schools, because I think that's the backbone of our education system, which means it's the backbone of our society. So we cannot short traditional public schools with, other things that have not been tested, other things that are not tried and true. I know that there are issues, but ultimately I think we need to support the traditional public school system and complement it with charter and ASD. But charter and ASD should not take over traditional schools.
Wow. So in other words, do what's best for the students.
Correct.
Do what's best for the students. Look, Mr. Chairman, we'll hold it right there. Let's come back. Let's talk a little bit about economic development in our communities and some of the other things that came out of the budget session on Monday night. So we'll be right back right here on the Chairman's Perspective with our very own Chairman and his take on what it looks like here in our communities. Be right back here on Chairman's Perspective.
The Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Hey, I'm Williams Brack, co-host of Grind Set. The insight you gain from us and our guests will motivate you to take the leap into entrepreneurship. Make sure to check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast provider.
Grind Set on the KUDZUKIAN Network. KUDZUKIAN!
Hello, this is Sheriff Floyd Bonner, Sheriff of Shelby County, and you're listening to the Chairman's Perspective, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network.
I'm DC, sitting in here on Chairman's Perspective. I'm sitting in a rapid fire chair today, and we're having what we call today the Chair's Take. That's right, our very own chairman, Van Turner, who's sitting across from me right now. He's normally running this thing, but today I said, Mr. Chair, let's talk about some stuff. Let's talk about this budget. I mean, you chaired this whole thing, and we want to get out to the listeners exactly what went down. And speaking of some stuff that went down, now, I don't want to get into this or that or he say, she say, but I heard there was just a little acrimony at the meeting between Commissioner Ford, Dr. Edmund Ford Jr., and Mayor Harris. All we want to know is, are they good now? That's all we want to know. Everybody, we got a kumbaya moment coming on yet?
Well, I hope so. And what I have to say is that, these guys, Commissioner Ford and Mayor Harris, served with each other on the city council.
Yeah,
so there's
right.
some history there. And I understand that there may have been some disagreements over policy issues back at council. And so now they are in the roles of commissioner and mayor. And perhaps some of that has come over from that situation. And also, I think the mayor had been interviewed, and he talked about his interesting relationship with the Ford family. He got his first political job, I think, through either Harold Ford Sr. or Jr.
Oh, wow.
Yet he ran against Kimball Ford and Ophelia Ford. And so he got into politics through the Ford empire or dynasty or political operation.
Sure, that's right.
And then he ended up running against 2 of the Ford members for office. And I think Commissioner Ford maybe took exception to even bringing those old races up, and therefore he had a few words for Mayor Harris. And Mayor Harris, I tried to keep it to where it wouldn't just blow up the whole meeting. And
that's right.
Mayor Harris had his say, Commissioner Ford had his say, and we got the budget passed and didn't raise taxes. So overall, when you say was there a kumbaya moment between the two, we didn't have that, but at least both worked together to get a balanced budget passed without a tax rate increase. So I call that a victory. And hopefully the lines of communication will stay open, and whatever has happened in the past will,
will go away.
Will melt away. Yeah. I mean, time heals all wounds.
That's what I hear.
And so, both of these, as I stated at the meeting, are young, bright, African-American elected officials. The people have put their faith in both of these
very strong-willed men. Very strong-willed men, both of them.
And the people have put their faith in these public servants, and they would like for them to get the job done, which they got done at our budget meeting. And I don't think they want to see these elected officials spar against one another in public going forward. So hopefully, things will resolve and we'll keep it moving forward. And I have tremendous respect for both Commissioner Ford and Mayor Harris. Yeah. And hopefully we can just keep it moving.
That's what I'd like to talk about. Let's keep it moving in Memphis and Shelby County. And speaking of keeping it moving, economic development. I mean, that's a broad term, but this is, when you talk about a Shelby County budget of about $1.3 billion, $1.4 billion, there's an opportunity for economic development to be spread out if it's not even just dealing with business dealing with businesses with government. But were there any touch points that this particular budget addressed when it came to particularly economic development in your mindset?
Yeah, I think, we talked with Carol Coletta on Memphis River Parks. And as you know, we did a $3.3 million allocation to help with the improvements at Tom Lee Park. And I think that our riverfront is iconic Memphis. I mean, you have Beale Street, you have Elvis Presley, you have the Civil Rights Museum, and then you have that beautiful waterfront.
Yeah, that's right.
Which you see coming over from Arkansas. And so I think that, of course, that's where Memphis and May is housed. And there's been some issues between Memphis River Parks and, of course, Memphis and May. But ultimately, we want a world-class river front. When you go to Detroit, when you go to Baltimore, when you go to a number of cities with rivers, that riverfront is really a main attraction. And that's all we simply want to do. And I think that once we invest in our riverfront, we'll see economic development and other investments come back. I remember there used to be this old restaurant that was right on the riverfront. It was a seafood restaurant.
That's not the pier you're talking
about.
The pier. Yeah, man.
I remember the pier, man.
I went to the pier for my prom. I think it was my prom.
Yeah.
Man, I enjoyed just looking out over that. Oh,
you
God.
Remember that?
Yeah. And I'm old.
Man, I ate at the pier too in high school.
Wow.
And so, I mean, we need that. I mean, don't you think we need something back like that?
I've seen plenty of riverfronts all over the.
Right.
We've talked to Carol Coletta at KUDZUKIAN, and matter of fact, we talked to her on the show, and so, it's amazing how we got all these great minds in our city, but we cannot come together at one table and say, look, this is good for everybody.
Everybody.
I mean, I love Memphis and May. The $137 million it pumps into our city each year. You can't do without that, right?
You can't do without it.
But can we have a Memphis in May? Can we have a Somerset in August down there? Can we do a lot of other things as well too? By our thinking.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And so it's my hope and prayer that the issues between Memphis and May and Memphis River Parks will resolve, because that riverfront should be utilized all year round.
Sir.
We should have restaurants and activities, a boardwalk. It just should be vibrant and lively no matter what month of the year.
Music, people.
I mean, that's what we need. And so I think this investment will hopefully spur that type of vision and activity. Carol Coletta is most certainly the right person to be leading that charge.
She's good.
As you stated, 50%, almost 50% minority business participation in the project. With
what other project? I hate to interrupt you. What other project we've ever had? I mean, there's some churches that are built that we don't even, in our communities that don't have 50% spends on building.
Right.
I don't want to name anybody, but I mean, I'm just being honest with you.
Right.
For this to have 50% spend, minority spend?
That's what I'm saying. So I think that was a smart allocation. I know that there was some controversy surrounding it. I know that there were strong feelings surrounding it, but I think it was the right thing to do. And hopefully we will see certainly some improvements there. We also allocated some funding towards Shelby Farms, which is, again, an iconic structure here in Memphis and Shelby County. It's one of the best, as they say, public parks in any city, anywhere in this country, and I would say the world. So I think that was a smart investment by the commission as well.
I think that, isn't it true that it's either the largest park other than Central Park, or we're larger than Central Park? It's one of the two. But even if we're number 2 to Central Park, look at what you're talking about.
Right. It's beautiful out there.
Man, it's wonderful out there.
Yeah, so.
You know. Speaking of beauty, and I know we just touched on that there was some acrimony between some people saying, "Hey, look, the money you're putting in that thing downtown, Tom Lee Park, But we're going to have our naysayers. We're going to have those people that are going to always say there's something else that you should be doing with those dollars. But now there was something that did occur in our city about a year ago. We had the statues that were taken out. I know you played an integral part of that. The Court of Appeals ruled against I don't want to say the Confederates, but people that look people ruled against them.
Right.
What's next with that? Can you give us a little insight into that piece? What's happening?
Well, as you know, I'm president of Memphis Green Space, and we won at the Chancery Court level in Nashville, and we prevailed at the Court of Appeals. The only other court that the Sons of the Confederate Veterans can go to now is the Tennessee Supreme Court, and they have approximately 60 days to do so. And so we'll see what happens. We'll see if the Supreme Court accepts the case. And if the Supreme Court does not accept the case, I think hopefully we'll be ready to transition the monuments outside of Shelby County.
Oh, wow.
And, I mean, that would be really a special day to get those monuments finally out of Shelby County. So I'm very, very much looking forward to that day, and I'm very much appreciative to everybody that had a hand in making this happen. You have my colleague on the commission, Tammy Sawyer, Earl Fisher.
Yeah.
Can't thank Mayor Jim Strickland enough. He signed the documents to transfer the parks
City Council
over.
gave him the
the go-ahead. Christopher Scoville and the whole legal team, Alan Wade, City Attorney's Office, Bruce McMullen, City Attorney. There were a lot of people who did a lot of hard work to get this done. And I don't want it ever to be said it was just one group, one entity, one person that got this done. There were many, many, many people that made this possible, and I'm so appreciative to everyone, and I'm looking forward to the day when we can get those monuments out of Shelby County to somewhere where they should be, perhaps a Civil War Memorial Park or some museum.
Maybe the Mississippi River. No. I don't want to. I didn't mean that.
Definitely out of Shelby County.
Out of Shelby County.
Yes,
You're listening to the Chairman's Perspective, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network, where today we're sitting down and we're having a candid conversation with not only our host, but also the Chairman of the County Commission, that is Van Turner Jr., and just getting his take on the budget and what's just occurred. We got a $1.3 billion budget here in Shelby County, and that dollar's been stretched I don't know how many different ways. And speaking of stretching that dollar, there may be a little bit of bloodshed that happened, but did the mayor pretty much get a lot of what he asked for in this budget?
Yeah, this was the mayor's first budget, and there were 8 new commissioners. It was their first budget as well. And so there was a little push and pull. Everyone had to fill each other out.
Sure.
But I think for the most part, the mayor got what he needed. We may have to revisit some things on down the road. But, I thought the mayor did well. I thought the commission did well.
The citizens did well.
I think the citizens did well. And I really have to tip my hat to my 2 budget chairmen. My budget chair was Eddie Jones. My budget vice chair was Edmund Ford. And then our chief officer in the county commission office is Karan Folsom. She stayed up late at night, worked on the weekends, and we pulled this together. And I'd like to just thank the entire commission staff as well, because they had to put up with 13 groggy and grumpy commissioners there for 10-hour meeting trying to get this thing done. And nobody strangled the other. So
there was no fighting. There was a little acrimony, but there was no bloodshed, right?
No furniture moving.
We heard about it. But anyway, we're going to get out of that furniture moving piece.
Yes, sir.
Speaking of one of those other budget priorities, I think as I understand it, we're in the transportation business a little bit now, right? So
absolutely.
There's an allocation to assist MATA. And as a chair now, I guess, can you go on record in saying that the commission, along with the mayor, and I guess what he's going to try to do in the future, we're going to have hopefully 2 seats at least on the MATA board, and possibly a reoccurring allocation to MATA each year?
Yeah, I think that's the hope. That's the vision. That's what we would like to happen. So I think having those 2 seats will be critical. And as Commissioner Edmund Ford always would say it is the metro area. It is the Memphis area transit authority. And so it's not just Memphis, but it's the greater Memphis area, which of course includes Shelby County. Some of the suburban commissioners were concerned that the transportation was not coming out to the suburban areas, but that's something that we can redress and something that we need to look at. But this system should serve all of Shelby County, and that's the hope, and that's why I think we need those seats, and that's why I think it's probably important to keep this funding going year after year.
Does it look like we're going to get those seats on the matter board?
Well, we put a stipulation in. We won't give the money unless we give the seats.
So you give us 2 seats, you're going to get this money. And that makes sense.
Yeah.
The county has got to have a role.
Right.
If you're asking us for dollars on a reoccurring basis each year, we need to be able to have some say.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we are fiduciaries of county tax dollars.
That's right.
So we're not going to give you that allocation year after year and not have fiduciaries on the board to guarantee that our money is being used for its highest and best purpose. And so I think that that's just fair, it's equitable, and I think the citizens of Shelby County are looking forward to having a transit system that works and that meets its needs, their needs.
Well, I'll tell you what, Mr. Chairman, we got a lot. You've given us a lot of information today. Is there anything out there that's on the horizon that you've already been foretold about, or you see coming down the road that you'd like to get out to the listeners? And because this is the chairman's take right now, is there something that you think they ought to be looking out for?
Well, 3 things. One, we're going to continue to push our minority business enterprise.
Yes, sir.
We're in litigation now, but despite that litigation, we know that we're on the side of right, and we're going to continue to fight for a piece of the pie for our Black-owned and women-owned and businesses in this community, Asian-owned, Latino-owned, so on and so forth. 2, Regional 1 is going to be a big issue. Their needs at Regional 1, and we have to support those needs. It is a Class A, world-renowned trauma center.
That's right, level 1, I think.
Level 1 for
yes,
burn
sir.
victims, for premature births, and for so on and so forth. And so we have to keep Regional 1 alive. It serves not only Memphis, but the Mid-South. There's going to be a multi-$100 million ask for Regional 1 that's coming up. So we're going to have to deal with it. And so $300 million, we have to deal with it. And then Shelby County Schools has a $500 million deferred maintenance ask that will eventually have to be dealt with by the commission. And so that would probably require bonding as well. Multi-million dollar, $500 million Shelby County School capital improvement, $300 million to the fiscal, to the building improvements for Regional 1. And so those 2 big items are on the horizon for this term commission. When I say term commission, 2018, 2022, and we got to redraw our lines in 2021. And so that would be, I think, an important exercise as well.
So you're talking about almost $1 billion, and I would say probably $1 billion in paper that's got to be written.
Right.
Oh God, is that going to be in your estimation? You think that's going to be a one-shot deal? Maybe we can piecemeal it.
Right.
But sometimes if you go and you get one big chunk at one time, you get a better rate. Am I not right?
Yeah. We're going to leave it up to our financial experts.
Yeah.
To our
which I am not. I gamble my money most days, so I really don't. I'm not the guy you got to be talking to, Mr. Chairman. But wow.
But yes, sir. We are looking at some huge ask, and we're going to have to deal with it. And so the Shelby County school system, we can't have our kids going into buildings that are falling apart.
That's right, substandard.
And we can't expect to give world-class trauma assistance to individuals in buildings that are caving in. So those are going to be 2 big concerns of ours.
Mr. Chairman, you provided so much insight today with your take on things, but unfortunately, we run out of time. So let's do this again real soon. Can we do it?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll be right back right here on the Chairman's Perspective here on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Chairman. The Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
The off-year electorate, the midterm electorates, are older, less diverse, more conservative. You have 2 electorates fighting for the future of this country. And what I'd say to your viewers and people listening in is, you know what? You got to stop that older, less diverse electorate from funking around with your future.
Funking up your airwaves and jamming the good information in your ear. Once again, it's Funky Politics.
Funky Politics. KUDZUKIAN.
We've had another great show here on the Chairman's Perspective with my co-host, DC.
Yes, sir. We have.
I appreciate this opportunity to share with you what occurred with our budget process, and hopefully we've been able to shed some light on that process. It only happens once a year, but it's important. And I see that the listeners are interested in what we have to say. The people are interested. We had a packed house that night, and I think we really got some good things done for Shelby County. This is a sacrifice for all of us, but it's a sacrifice worth making because we love our community, we love our county, and we want to see the best for Shelby County. So that's why we do it. That's why we sacrifice. And if I had to do it all over again, I'd do it all over again. That's how much I love this
without the bloodshed, right?
Without the bloodshed. So come on back for future episodes of The Chairman's Perspective, and we will always be right here on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
The Chairman's Perspective Podcast. Executive producer, Shelby County Commission's Van Turner. Hosted by Chairman Van Turner Jr. and Darrell DC Catron. Recorded at KUDZUKIAN Studios. Directed, produced, and distributed by KUDZUKIAN.